friends, and welcome to episode 20 of the Woldenburn podcast. This is a podcast that's about sewing and knitting and kind of crafting in general, if you will, as well as books, occasionally a small segment on books and things that I've been watching. So, my name is Emily. I feel like I have not always been great about mentioning that right at the beginning of the podcast episodes. And I kind of need to get better at it just because my username on YouTube is just Woldenburn, so most people may or may not know what my actual name is, and it's Emily. I am coming to you from Tennessee, where I live with my beautiful, wonderful, amazing husband Micah, and I am currently just over 32 weeks pregnant with our very first little baby, which is absolutely amazing and so brilliantly exciting. Today, my drink of choice is almond milk because, per said pregnancy thing, acid reflux has been a constant in my life over the last several months, and as particularly we are in the stage now where this little baby boy is just getting bigger and bigger, acid reflux isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and one of the best things to help with it has been almond milk. I end up drinking an inordinate amount of it. So that is what I am sipping on today. It is a very hot, summery sort of a week here in Tennessee, so you will probably hear some sort of humming in the background from either the ceiling fan or the air conditioner. It has been kind of in a massive heat wave over the last week or so, and it's expected to continue for the next week or so, so it's just too warm to not have the air conditioning and the ceiling fan on. So, apologies for that. I'm hoping that between my microphone and editing afterwards I can get most of any sort of buzzing or humming noise out, but I might not be able to. So, it has been a little bit of a crazy couple of weeks since the last time I podcasted. I actually filmed this episode yesterday and then realized that I don't know, I wasn't feeling like I was in the right mood, and so I wanted to refilm it. So it is currently Friday, which is a couple days later than I typically film, so this is probably going to go up tomorrow or Saturday. And yeah, it's been a little bit all over the place in my personal life here recently. I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of the episode if you're interested. But for now, let's jump into some knitting because I have some beautiful things to share with you this week, and I'm very, very excited about it. I feel like my knitting mojo has kind of come back here recently. If you've been here for the last couple of episodes, I think, or maybe last week or the week before, I don't remember. I feel like my knitting mojo has kind of been a little bit down here recently, but then over the last couple of weeks, I started a new project and it just kind of reawakened all of my desire to knit all of the things. So I have a brand new cast on, and I was able to go through and work on a bunch of my other more languishing, they're not really languishing, I haven't been working on them for that long, but some of my other projects. So let's just go ahead and dive right into that. First off, I do actually have a finished object. I finally finished the second of my robin socks. This is just a basic vanilla shorty sock knit out of the West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in their robin colorway, which is just this beautiful self-patterning, self-striping yarn that I absolutely love. I purchased a ball of it at the end of last year and with the intention of making myself some Christmas socks, but that didn't happen. And so I am so happy to finally have these done and ready to go for fall time. It is definitely not sock wearing weather around here at all. It is, as I mentioned, heat wave, very hot. My feet like to be bare. But I am very happy to have these off my needles and ready to go for, September, October, December, all of those lovely cold weather months. So yeah, and these are just knit according to my personal basic sock knitting recipe, which is I use a US size 1 knitting needle, which is a 2.25 millimeter, and I knit my socks on 56 stitches. So nothing else much to say about these. They're just vanilla socks, and I feel like with vanilla socks there's not really much to ever say about them other than the yarn and the stitch count. But I definitely have a good chunk of the West Yorkshire Spinners yarn left over, and I'm pretty sure what I will probably do is either knit another pair of socks that has like a texture stitch pattern, or just knit another vanilla sock but with like some contrasting heels or toes or something like that, just to kind of differentiate between the two. But yeah, this is my first time working with West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply. I had it in one other colorway that I have made a pair of socks out of, and I've wanted to try this yarn for quite some time, so I was super happy to be able to pick some up last year, and I'm pretty pleased with it. It's just kind of a basic, hard-wearing, good for socks sort of a yarn. It's 75% wool, 25% nylon, which typically ends up being my favorite blend. Is just one of the more rustic wools with either nylon or polymid. I honestly don't know the difference between nylon and polymid. They seem to be kind of interchangeably used in fingering weight sock yarns, so I don't know. Anyway, I typically find that just wool yarn, wool and nylon blends versus like a superwash merino and nylon blends typically end up being a more hard-wearing sock, and for whatever reason just seem to fit and wear just a little bit better. So yeah, I've been very happy with my West Yorkshire Spinners yarn purchase, and I will probably make it a point to buy some more because it comes in these big 100-gram skeins, and I am able to get a pair of shorty socks out of a 50-gram skein usually, and yeah, so this is definitely 2 pairs worth of socks. So yeah, I'm very glad to have those off my needle. I've just been languishing for a little bit too long. I think I've mentioned it before in previous podcast episodes that I am not a big fan of having kind of long-term, super languishing works in progress. I either want to finish them or frog them, one or the other, because otherwise they just kind of hang over my head. So if something has been just kind of sitting there for a few months, I need to either finish it or get rid of it, like one or the other. So I am very pleased to have that one done. And then, let me put this over here out of the way. I went ahead and cast on another sock, which this one is not for me. This is actually for my husband. I just put, my last video that I put up was a knit and chat video, and quick side note here, you guys have all been so amazing. You were so lovely. You left so many beautiful, wonderful, thoughtful comments on that video, and it just made me feel all the warm and fuzzy feelings, and I am definitely going to be doing more knit and chat videos. I just had so much fun doing that one, and I talked about a bunch of yarn and yarn haul and all of that, and talked about my thoughts on, you know, using budget-friendly yarns for knitting projects, knitting patterns, or at least having a suggested budget-friendly yarn. And yeah, it was just, I had so much fun. It was absolutely lovely. So if you guys have any questions or topics that you would like me to talk about for a knit and chat video, I'm not picky about said topics. Whatever you are interested in, if you have any suggestions or thoughts, feel free to leave them in a comment down below, because yeah, like I said, I'm definitely going to be doing some more of those because they're just really fun to just kind of sit and knit and chit chat about stuff. It's great. I'm definitely planning to do one talking about like my experience with pregnancy overall, and kind of diving into some things like, you know, body image and some of those kind of more, I guess you could say, mental aspects of pregnancy. So stay tuned for that if you are interested. If you're not, I'm not offended. I know a lot of people are just like, kids, pregnancy, ugh, yeah. But if you are interested, stay tuned. Anyway, that was kind of a tangent. The reason I went off on that tangent was because, as I mentioned, I did a yarn haul in that video, and I spoke about the drops yarn that I purchased from Sun Yarn Studio off of Etsy. Oops, I think my phone just buzzed. Yeah. And I have cast on a pair of socks for my husband, and this is, yeah, like I said, Drops Fable. It's a superwash treated sock wool. This is a 75% wool, 25% polyamide. Like I said, I feel like they're just kind of, nylon and polyamide are used interchangeably. It is the color 400 or just black, and it's just a plain, nothing crazy, as you can see, no self-patterning or anything, plain sock yarn. And I picked up a couple balls of black and a couple balls of gray to just make my husband some basic everyday sort of work socks. And I haven't made a ton of progress so far, but I am experimenting with knitting a pair of toe-up socks because I'm curious to see if there's going to be any sort of a fit difference between toe-up and my typical sock construction, which is cuff down. So I was just like, ooh, I'm going to experiment and see if this changes how it fits him. Yeah, and I'm about halfway through the foot, I would say. I think I have about 10 to 15 more rows before I'll need to start doing the increases for the heel. And yeah, there's not a lot to say about this one because it is a very plain black sock. But it is one of those types of things where this is something that will get so much wear because it is so basic and boring and plain. And it's exactly the type of knitwear that my husband will get a load of wear out of. And I haven't knit a toe-up sock in quite some time, so I didn't feel like looking up any tutorial for how to cast on, so I just kind of did the toe from what I remembered from the last time that I knit a toe-up sock. So I think it's technically like the Judy's Magic Cast On or something, but it could have been like completely and totally fudged a bit. And then I cast on, I think, either 20 or 24 stitches, and then I increased every other row until I had 56 stitches. And again, I'm using my US size 1 or 2.25 millimeter double pointed needles. And right now, at least, I knit all of my socks on double pointed needles. I am interested in getting some Leica needles, and I would like to do some magic loop with those for knitting socks. I think that would just be really fun. It's actually my goal to get a couple of different needles from a couple of different brands and just try out some different circular needles. It is something I would love to do, to be able to invest in a full-on set of interchangeable circular needles from a high quality knitting needle brand, but it's a little outside of budget right now. And I realized that it would work really well if I can just get one or two like fixed circulars from each of the different companies, like Hi Sharp, potentially the Abby's Turbo Clicks, I think that's what they called. Maybe some of the knitting needles from Knit Picks, get a couple of interchangeable, or not interchangeable, circular needles from Chiagu. I know that those ones are really, really popular. And just basically try out a knitting needle from each one of these different ones and decide which brand is my favorite. And then basically save up until I can get the actual like whole interchangeable knitting needle set, because that's an investment. But it's kind of nice when you get to a certain point in your crafting career, if you will, to invest in really nice high quality tools. So that's what I'm hoping to do at some point. But for right now, I just use the double pointed needles that I bought at the craft store for like a few dollars. And they work fine. Because here's a PSA for you if you are a new knitter. It is okay to use dirt cheap and expensive knitting tools. absolutely fine. You will still get the same knitting results. It's totally fine. It might not be as like luxurious and pleasant of an experience as if you had a nice, more expensive knitting needle set, but it's just knit stitches and purl stitches. It's all the same thing. And, okay, the next work in progress that I have is actually another one of my, or I guess I could say a longer standing work in progress that I am trying to get off my needles because, yes, like I said, it's driving me nuts. This is the second sock of my Freckle socks, which was a pattern that I test knit for Sarah Opie, I believe is her name. And I finished the first one in plenty of time for this deadline. I started the second one and got, I think it must have been like that much in, and just got distracted. I knit a pair of socks for my husband and I got distracted by other knitting projects and then kind of lost my knitting mojo a little bit. So these just sat with about that much knit for probably a month or two at this point, which really annoys me. So I finally, I was just feeling really inspired this last week with my knitting, and I picked them up and I popped the short row heel into it, and I have, as you can see, started working on the foot of the sock. And here's a little bit of a close-up. And yeah, they're coming along. They're a little bit slow going just because it is a colorwork sock, so it's a little bit less speedy than if you were just knitting a vanilla sock, but they are still coming along quite quickly. I am not a huge fan of short row heels. They don't fit my heel as well as a heel flap and gusset. That is 100% my preferred way to knit a heel, but I knit the other sock according to the pattern because I was test knitting it, and so I just stuck with the short row heel for the second sock so that my socks will match. One thing I do really love about this pattern is the picot cuff. I am definitely going to be using that again in future socks. It looks so fun, and it actually fits really, really well. I was a little bit worried that it wouldn't, that it would end up being a little bit too loose or something, but it's not. It fits really well, so I'm definitely going to be using that again in the future. I am knitting this sock, again, US size 1, 2.25 millimeter double pointed needles, and I am knitting it out of a couple of different yarns, one of which is some of my hand-dyed yarn from my yarn stash. Let me put this back away. So here's this one, and it's just kind of a creamy with lots of pops of colors in there. And then I'm using the Millamia Naturally Soft Sock. In this colorway is Gunpowder, if I remember correctly. And this was a new to me to use yarn, and I'm a big fan. I really like it. It's really economical. I bought it off of lovecrafts.com, and I think I got it in a sale, so it was less than $6 for a 50-gram ball. And I was delighted when I discovered that I was able to knit my husband a pair of socks out of the other 50-gram ball, and I still have this much left over. So that was really, really nice, which basically means that for each ball of yarn, this is the kind of full 50-gram, for each ball of yarn I'm able to get a pair of shorty socks. Both my husband and I primarily wear shorty socks. We don't really wear the longer socks, so it works out perfectly. And this is another wool and either nylon or polyamide, I can't remember, blend. And it just has that slightly rustic feeling to it that just, I don't know, I really like that for socks. The one complaint that I would have is that there were certain parts of this yarn where it seems like you can kind of see it. There's one where the plies are kind of coming undone a little bit, and I definitely noticed that there were portions of it where it seemed like the yarn had just been twisted really, really tightly, and so it was extra, extra, extra thin. That was the only downside, I guess I could say, to it. Once it's all knit up, you really can't tell, but I am curious to see if it's going to wear kind of funny in those spots, but haven't noticed anything yet. And my husband has been wearing his socks a lot. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and I have high hopes for it. But it does depend, because if I end up really liking how the Drops Fable yarn works up and how it fits and everything, I could see myself using that more than the Millimia Naturally Soft Sock, just because this is definitely a finer weight, fingering weight yarn, and it seems to be a little bit less kind of plump, I guess you could say, or consistently plied maybe? I don't know. I don't know what the technical term is, but anyway. My husband did really like the fact that because it is a thinner weight yarn, it made a thinner pair of socks, which is perfect for summertime. So I'm going to make him some socks out of the Drops Fable, and we're going to kind of compare them, and then I will know which one I want to use for his socks going forward, because I could see myself just kind of consistently knitting him a lot of socks, just basic shorty socks over the next however many years, you know. Yeah, I think that is all of my sock knitting projects. So now we have a couple of garment knitting projects. So the first garment project is one that I have talked about a number of times before, and it's still in progress. I would say that I'm a slow sweater knitter. It takes me a while to get one done, and that's okay. I just kind of chug away on it until it gets done. This is my So Faded sweater, which is a beautiful basic sweater pattern designed by Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and I have made some progress. I have finished one sleeve, and I've got the needles ready to go to pick up the second sleeve. Because there's a little bit of a story behind it. I got done with the sleeve, and I really loved how the ribbing looked on the cuff. I was just like, oh, it looks so lovely and kind of tight and neat, I guess you could say, and it just looks so good. And then I looked at the ribbing that I had done on the body, and it just looked kind of wavy and looser and a little bit wonky, and I didn't love it. So I heaved a sigh, ripped out the body ribbing, and re-knit it, and it looks so much better. I'm so glad that I did. I used a slightly smaller needle than I had done previously. I think I used a size 3 before, and I went down just a little bit. I have one random knitting needle that I think somebody gave to me that is technically in between a size US 2 and a size US 3. It's like a 2 what is it? 7.5? Or just I don't know. It's an in-between one. It's neither a US 2 or a US 3. And I ended up using that for the cuff on my sweater sleeve, and I really liked how it looked. And so that's what I used for the body. So I re-knit like this whole section, which is why there's not really any progress done on the sleeve. And then the other reason why was because I picked up, gotta pull this over here, there we go. I picked up my first set of 16-inch circular knitting needles from Hobby Lobby a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and because I really wanted to try them for knitting sleeves. I think I mentioned last time that I had switched from magic loop to double pointed needles, and I still wasn't finding that I was getting into that, like, if you're a knitter, you know, like there's a rhythm where you get into that rhythm and you're just able to just kind of go. And it's so smooth and so flawless and just amazing. And I just wasn't finding that I was getting into that rhythm with either magic loop or double pointed needles for this sleeve. And it was driving me nuts. So I picked up this 16-inch circular, just again, a very cheap, it's like the Hobby Lobby brand of knitting needles, and they were on 50% off sale, so I was able to get it for like $3. I was like, okay, I'm not going to splurge on a 16-inch needle just because I don't know if I'm going to like it or not, and I love it. It works so well. And so I was actually using these for another project, for another sleeve, which I will show you in a minute. And I wasn't able to use it for this one quite yet, so I wanted to finish that using this needle for the other project, so then I could use it for this one. And oh, it worked so well. I'm so happy with it. And I think part of the reason I may have had it might not have been a 16-inch, but I feel like I've used like a short circumference to try and knit like sleeves and stuff before. But the issue that I ran into was that the needle tip was longer, and so that makes it so that your total circumference of your knitting needle is longer, and so the stitches were really like stretched out and it just didn't work. And so I feel like with this one it worked super well because these are probably only like 3-inch tips or something like that, and it went so smoothly. It was so lovely. So I'm definitely going to be getting a few more of these, probably the same ones from Hobby Lobby for now, and then eventually when I have the budget I can invest in, like I said, a proper interchangeable knitting needle set that will have the shorter tips and the shorter cable lengths, and I think that will probably be the way that I go for knitting sleeves anytime in the future, because it was lovely. I enjoyed it so much. It worked so well. I'm a little bit of a convert now, so yeah. But that does mean that this kind of got put on pause for a minute while I was working on the other project, which I will talk about in a second. I'm super excited about it. But I have all of these stitches put onto another knitting needle ready to go to pick up the last, I think it's like 10 stitches or something that I need on the underarm, and then just chug away and knit my second sleeve. And then it'll be a matter of weaving in all the ends, folding over and stitching down the neckband, and I'll have a finished sweater, which I'm really excited about. I have not finished a sweater in quite some time. Like I said, I am a very slow, I would count myself as a very slow garment knitter. It just takes me a while. So the last sweater that I finished was my Gill sweater, which is a pattern by Claire Walls of Flossy Knits, and I think I finished that in January. And it's already June. So yeah, I'm a slow sweater knitter, but that's okay with me. I knit a lot of socks in the in-between time, and I've worked on a lot of other projects in the in-between time, so I'm not too worried about it. There's that. Again, I'm knitting the size, I think it's a 38-inch bust. And the yarns are all just my hand-dyed yarns. I've kind of gone over it in previous episodes, so I won't get too much into it. It's a 75-25 superwash merino nylon blend. Okay, the moment I have been waiting for, I get to talk about my newest project, which I'm in love with it. I just love it so much. So, this is actually a test knit as well. I am privileged enough and lucky enough to have been able to participate in the test knit that is being run by Sophie of the Knit Pearl Girl, and she put up a test knit for her crescendo blouse pattern. She has a crescendo sweater, I think, and it's this beautiful design with this lace color or lace yoke, and it's lovely. I really like how it looks. And so I'm on her newsletter, and she put out a testing call for the kind of summer blouse version, and I pretty much immediately signed up for it. And I'm loving it so much. I have been working on this a lot. So not only have I finished my yoke of the sweater, I have finished not one, but 2 sleeves, and I am chugging away on the body, and I am very close to, I need to try it on, but I'm very close to being able to work the hem. So this is almost a finished garment, and I am in love with it. It has been such an enjoyable knit, both process-wise and finished like garment-wise. It's gonna be amazing. I love it. So let's talk about it a little bit. Like I said, it has this lace yoke. You can kind of sort of see it. I am using a heavily variegated yarn, so it does disguise the lace a little bit, but you can kind of see it. It's this sort of growing diamond lace pattern. Super easy to knit. It is charted, which I have not done a lot of charted designs, but I have not had any issues with doing it. The pattern is very well written. Even though it's a test knit and the pattern's not completely done, it's a beautiful pattern. And so, yeah, I blitzed through the yoke portion of the pattern. It just went by so quickly. And then I went ahead and worked both of the sleeves, and these are the sleeves that I needed my 16-inch knitting needle for. And it has these really cool, like, folded over, what do they call it? It's like sewed down hem. I guess they're flipping quite badly right now. This is just going to need a good block afterwards to get it to like everything to lay flat. But I just love how clean and neat that looks. I've never done one before, and it's like a sewn down knitted hem thing. And then I wanted to go ahead and get those done because I am a little bit limited in the amount of yarn that I have. The pattern calls for using a 100% fingering weight cotton yarn. I don't have any cotton yarn in my stash that would fit the requirements, and so I did have this yarn, which is some of my hand-dyed yarn. For those of you who have watched my podcast for a while, you may recognize it. I was using this to knit the Lofoten sweater by Emily of the Blue Mouse Knits, and I ended up frogging that project because it just was not coming along the way that I wanted it to, and it was not looking the way that I wanted it to, and so I ended up frogging it. But this yarn has been hanging over my head like nobody's business. Before I cast on the Lofoten, I had gone back and forth and tried to figure out a project to make with it, and it has just been sitting in my stash. And it was one of those yarns that I really, really wanted to use, but I just couldn't figure out what to use it for. And I feel like this was honestly a big reason why my knitting mojo kind of went downhill a bit, was just because after I frogged it, it was just sitting there, and I was so frustrated at this silly yarn for sticking in my head so badly. So I think that's another part of the reason why I'm loving this so much, is that I'm actually using this yarn and getting it out of my stash. And this is just a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. So I don't know how much wear I will actually get out of this for summertime, but I could definitely see myself wearing it in the early fall months when it's cooling down, but it's not like cold yet. I can definitely see myself wearing this, or potentially even in the winter months over top of like a turtleneck t-shirt or something. I think that could be really cute. But yeah, I love this design so much. I definitely want to get some cotton yarn in like a solid color to knit a proper summer version. I think that would be amazing, but oh, I love this. I love it so much. And we are definitely into the kind of mindless autopilot mode because it's just knitting the body. Because I also finished the neckline, which has this really interesting I-cord finish, which again is a finish that I haven't done before, and I love how it looks. It looks so cool. I love that it kind of shows different, like the sections of the different colors of yarn. So we've got like the orange and then the blue and the green and the yellow. I really, really like how it looks. So once I finish the body, all I have to do is weave in the ends and block it, and I will have a finished tee, and I am so excited about it. Yeah, it just... it makes me so happy. Yeah, I absolutely love this pattern. I'm so happy that I was able to test knit it, and I am definitely interested in knitting another one. So stay tuned for that. There is a local to me yarn store that I didn't find out about until maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm really excited to go to this yarn store and buy some yarn and stuff. I've been looking at their shop online, and they have so many different options for yarn, even though it's like a small yarn store. So I'm saving up a little bit of a budget so I can go there and get some yarn for some sweaters and some knitted toys for my little baby, and just a few different projects. I'm kind of like getting a few different things laid out in my head of like stuff that specific projects that I want to get yarn for. And I'm pretty sure, from what I remember, they had some cotton yarn that I could get that would be fingering weight, that I could make one of these out of. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm so happy with this. I'm so happy to be getting this yarn out of my stash. I love how it's knitting up. It is the issue that I've had with this yarn previously, this is some of my hand-dyed yarn, is that it tends to pool quite badly, which you can kind of still see, but I feel like especially in the yoke section, it's not too bad. And it's kind of far enough down in the body that it's kind of pooling a little bit, and it's in sort of smaller sections, so it doesn't bother me as much. And overall, I love the pattern so much that I don't mind. But in previous projects, like when I've tried to knit the sweater with it, or, well, socks I think were okay, but I had 2 skeins of it, and I didn't want to use it just for socks. And so I'm just thrilled to be getting a top out of it. Yeah. Anyway, I have gushed about this for so long. I'm super, super happy, super excited to get it done. I'm really looking forward to getting that bottom edging done. Not gonna lie, I'm not 100% looking forward to doing the sewn down hem. It's gonna look amazing, but it takes a while, and it took a while just doing the sleeves, which is a tiny little circumference. I'm gonna have to do the body, which has like 200 plus stitches. But it'll be worth it in the end, and I'm also really excited to see how it's gonna look when it blocks out. Like, this lace is just gonna look so good. But I'm gonna stop gushing about that, and we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next segment of the podcast. Okay, I have to pull up my, what's it called? Ravelry. So I could pull up this knitting pattern that I wanted to share with you for the knitting inspiration segment of the podcast, if it'll open up, so I can just remember the name of it and the name of the designer. I was watching the Woldenburn podcast, which is hosted by Kristen. She is another one of those like long-time knitting podcasters that I have watched for years, kind of off and on over the last few years. I'm not a huge fan of how she's changed up her podcasting style. I don't know, I feel like I really like kind of the, I guess you could say, traditional knitting podcast format, and she doesn't always completely follow that anymore, and yeah, I don't know. I still watch her videos pretty consistently, but in her most recent one, or maybe the one before, I can't remember, she was talking about a new-to-me knitting pattern designer and a knitting pattern that she was in the process of working on. And so I went and checked out the designer and found that she has a lot of really pretty-looking patterns. So I had to pull this up here so I could remember the names of it. I believe, I'm probably going to butcher how this is pronounced, but the designer is Yamagara on Ravelry, and I will pop pictures up here. And the pattern that Kristen was talking about, I really fell in love with. It's called the Lapis top, and it's this kind of slightly oversized, grown-on sleeves sort of a top. And I love it because it kind of has almost that, it's almost a feather and fan stitch. I love the feather and fan stitch. It's a knitting stitch, and it is one that I wanted to try. I've wanted to make some sort of garment or blanket or something or shawl that has the feather and fan stitch in it. I have yet to do it. I do not know why, because I love this stitch pattern so much. So when I was watching Kristen's episode and she showed a picture of it, it has almost a feather and fan. It's not quite the actual feather and fan, but it's sort of like a chevron, similar vibe to the feather and fan stitch. And I really, 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 really like how it looks. And I really want to make this top. But I was also looking at the rest of Yamagara's knitting patterns. She has a lot of gorgeous knitting patterns, but the other one that I particularly fell in love with, her garments are just, they're so beautiful. I'm getting distracted. The other one that I really, really like the look of is her tin roof pattern. And again, I'll pop a picture up here. It's so interesting because it's worked from like side to side, and then I think the bottom portion is worked, and it's just this really pretty kind of boxy tee, and I think it looks so cool. It's knit in, let me see here. Is it a fingering weight? Yes, it's a fingering weight. Both of those are knit in fingering weight yarns. And I think it just looks so cool. I love the kind of color blocking aspect of it. So those two patterns are two that I really, really want to knit at some point. It might be a little bit just because I do have some other stuff that I'm working on, obviously. But I kind of want to go diving through my stash and see if I can find yarns to use for it. Because as I've mentioned previously, I have a lot of kind of single skeins of yarn that I don't have enough of that individual colorway to knit a whole sweater. But with both of these, they're kind of combining different colorways, and I think that it would be really, really cool to be able to knit them in some of my hand-dyed yarns, but in different colors. Like, I think it would look so cool. But that is, we're keeping it short and sweet for the knitting inspiration section today. That's all I have for that one. But please do go check out the designer Yamagara. To be honest, I love like probably all of her garment knitting patterns, but those two in particular were the two that stood out to me. That brings us to the next segment of the podcast, which is sewing. And I actually have a finished project for this one. Let me grab this here. I actually finished this morning, so I'm going to scooch back just a little bit. I have made another version of the Deer and Doe myosotis dress. I've modified it slightly, which I'll talk about it in a second. This is what we got, which is beautiful, kind of empire waist, sort of oversized fit dress. It has a Mandarin style collar and, yeah, just gathered skirt. Really, really lovely pattern. I have made, this is my third version so far, and I actually made this to wear, my husband and I were going to a wedding on Saturday, tomorrow, and I made this to wear tomorrow, and I really, really love it. I think it turned out absolutely perfect for what I needed it to be. I used a just cotton fabric from Hobby Lobby that I picked up a couple of weeks ago, and I'm super pleased with how it turned out. So I made this in the size 42. I used the sleeve pattern that is included in the pattern, but I left off the sleeve ruffle, which I have put on both of my previous versions, and I just added some elastic. One thing I would change, I love how it looks. The reason I did that too is because I like to wear my summery cotton dresses in the fall and winter time with a cardigan over top. With that ruffle on the sleeve, as beautiful as the ruffle is, it would be really difficult to wear it with a cardigan. So I wanted to try it leaving the ruffle off so I could wear it with a cardigan. I think I would either shorten the sleeve slightly or lengthen it. My camera cut off because my memory card was full. What I was saying was, it is not bad by any means, the length of the sleeve right now. It seems to hit right at the bust portion, which is the widest part of your upper body. And so I think that it would be just a tad more flattering if I either shortened it a little bit more so it's more of a cap sleeve, or lengthened it so it's more of a, not quite elbow, like just before elbow sleeve. I think that would be really cute too. This one does have a full bust adjustment to it. I purposefully I modified my full bust adjustment a little bit, and I made the darts less. I don't know how to explain this exactly, but I used less of the darts. So I made the darts smaller without doing any sort of crazy pattern adjustments. I just didn't fold in and stitch the darts quite as much for either the waist or the side bust dart. And the reason for that is, so I am, like I mentioned, just over 32 weeks pregnant, and I feel like in the last couple of weeks, we're at the kind of the end stages of pregnancy at this point. And for those of you who aren't familiar, when you're at the end of your pregnancy, baby really grows, like really grows so quickly, averaging about half a pound a week. So what that means for me is that my baby bump is growing as well. It's rapidly expanding. So over just the last couple of weeks, my wardrobe has yet again dwindled down to about 5 dresses that I can wear. Those 2 Felicity dresses that I finished, a week or 2, or not, I don't think it was this last podcast episode, the one before. I can't really wear them anymore. They still fit, but for whatever reason, that seam, the waist seam, hits in that perfect spot where it makes my acid reflux so bad. There's definitely still ease in there, but it's just not enough. And so that was why I ended up needing to make another dress. Just switch my camera back a little bit. Because I couldn't wear either of those. I can't wear them anymore. They make my acid reflux so bad, and my acid reflux is already bad enough that anything that makes it worse, just no. So I'll be able to wear those once I'm done being pregnant, obviously, but I just needed to make sure that when I made this dress that I had just a little bit more room in the waistline. So that's what I did. I purposefully I did it in all the darts because I did it in the back darts too. I made them just like a smidge less full, and it worked out perfectly. Like there's enough ease in there. And the other nice thing about the myosotis dress is that it has an empire waistline, so it hits higher up anyway. So it all works out. The other modification that I made was that I just used my basic, I guess you could say, gathered skirt. I didn't use the skirt pattern pieces that were included in the pattern. It's just 2 rectangles gathered, stitched together, and then I did use the pocket piece that's included. So it has pockets because I love pockets. And I love pockets in general. And as I'm about to be a mum, I am only going to love pockets even more. So overall, super duper pleased with how it turned out. I've used snaps on the front, which is my fastening of choice. If I have to choose between snaps or buttons, it's going to be snaps. And yeah, I think that's about all I gotta say about it. I am definitely planning to make at least one more myosotis dress, if not 2 or 3, just because they are so comfy, and again, my wardrobe just keeps shrinking, which is totally fine. This is like exactly what this baby boy is supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be getting nice and fat and plump and squishy, but man, it does make wearing clothes difficult. So that is my finished project. For those of you who tuned in for like my last podcast episode, you will know, you can see it back there. Well, I'm totally in the way. On the back of my chair back here. That is the Jennifer Lauren handmade sorrel dress that I'm working on. I kind of lost my mojo just a little bit on that, mostly because I was so sad and frustrated about my Felicity dresses that I just finished that I only got to wear for like a month maybe, and then my stomach got too big. And so I kind of lost steam on it a little bit. All that it needs is some snaps and a hem and it'll be done. But it kind of got put in timeout just a little bit because I wanted to make something that I knew would fit. So the myosotis dress came in and was sewn in 2 days. I cut it out Wednesday evening and I finished it Friday morning. Yeah. super fast sew. Also because I've made it 3 times at this point. The other sewing project that I have to talk about, though, is pretty fun. I 100% blame Laura of the Tiny Human Knits podcast for this. Hi, Laura, if you're watching, this is your fault. I can't remember if it was her most recent podcast episode. I was watching some of her older episodes, so I can't remember which one it was. She mentioned that she was making her partner a shirt, and she was using the McCall's 6044. Which is just a very basic, simple men's button-up shirt pattern. And it just so happened that Joanne was having a pattern sale, and I was able to pick this up for like $2. And I have been wanting to make my husband a sweater, like a hand-knit sweater, for ages. And I have not gotten around to it. And I've been wanting to make him some sort of a garment other than just socks. I love making him socks. He wears the socks that I make him all the time, but I don't know, there's just something about it. I really wanted to make him an actual garment. And he typically has a pretty hard time finding button-up shirts that fit because he likes relatively slim fit shirts, and he's tall, and so between those two things, it makes it a little bit difficult. So I was just like, this is perfect. This is a basic, simple sewing pattern. I'm gonna try. And so that's what I'm doing. So like I said, I picked this up when it was on sale. I am stitching up the size medium. And Laura mentioned that this shirt pattern is very long. She was not wrong. I held up one of my husband's ready to wear shirts to the pattern pieces. And the pattern pieces are just like somewhere between like 1.5 inches to 3 inches longer. Like, it is a long pattern. So I went ahead and preliminarily took out about 1 inch in length on both the front and the back pieces, and then I'm gonna have my husband try it on once I get to that point, and then if I need to, I'll hem it up a little bit further. But I started with that. So as a heads up, compare it with your significant others. Like, if they have a shirt that they like that fits really well, compare it, and you can kind of eliminate some of the extra length if you need to. But I was able to pick up some, I think it's called stretch shirting. It's a cotton shirting fabric, and I really like to get these sort of stretch shirting fabrics because all that means is it just has a little bit of elastic or nylon or something in it, so it just gives a little bit. It is not like a jersey stretchy fabric, and it only does that one way, so just make sure that if you get some, you're using that slight stretch vertically. That word. And the reason why that's amazing is that then it means that over the shoulders and stuff, when you do like this, there's a little bit of give in it, and it just makes it that much easier when you are making garments, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else. It makes it that much easier for it to fit. But I just got this, I don't even know, palm leaf, plant leaf print. I really like this one. Joann's did not have a very big selection of the stretch shirtings, and at least in store. And I really like this one because my husband has red hair and he looks amazing in blue. He looks particularly attractive. So I was really happy with this one. This one was the one that I liked the best. And I like that it's kind of in between sort of Hawaiian vacation shirts and like super dressy shirts. So something like this he could wear to like church or to different like more casual events, and it wouldn't be too vacation-y. If that makes sense. He has a few different shirts that I bought him last year from Old Navy that have like different sea animals, I think like lobsters and what are the other two? It's like, I don't remember, lobsters, starfish, something like that. And those are definitely a bit too casual for most things, but I feel like with this one, he could almost wear it to work. Like, he might be able to wear it to work, but I'd have to ask him if he felt comfortable wearing this print to work. So it's like almost there. But yeah, I have all of my pieces cut out. I have not gotten as much done on it as I wanted to. And the reason for that was I realized that with this particular fabric, it was just the one color of thread that I did not have. I did not have any thread color that would match it. So I had to get some, oh, it's on my machine. I had to get some navy thread that would match it, and I had to get some shirt buttons, because in this instance, this is an instance where I will have to use buttons and not snaps. But it's fine. It'll be worth it. So all I've really done is gotten all of the pieces cut out. I got the interfacing attached to the collar and the button bands, and I started work on the pocket, which just, it looks so cool. I have made a couple of men's shirts in the past, and I've made shirt dresses for myself that have all of the same details, like, you know, the pockets and like the button bands and the collars and all of that stuff. So this isn't too much of a departure for me. It's all very much like the same stuff that I have done in the past. It's just a little bit different because it's for a guy rather than for me. But hopefully that means it'll be a little bit easier, because, you know, I won't have to worry about doing any sort of full bust adjustments or anything like that for him, which is marvelous. I always have to do that for me. So it's just another step of the sewing process that I have to do. But with this one, I feel like, especially now that I got my thread and I finished my dress that I was working on, it should whip up pretty quickly, either today or tomorrow. I was low-key wishing that I could get it done in time that he could wear it for the wedding tomorrow. I don't think that's gonna happen, and I don't think that that is a goal or deadline that I want to put on myself. So if it happens, it happens, but I don't think it will. I'll keep you updated on that. But I'm really excited about it. I really hope that it turns out well enough that he can at least wear it, and that then I'll be able to modify it a little bit and have a really nice shirt pattern. Because the thing that I love about this pattern is it comes with, not only does it have this nice short sleeve shirt, it has a very, very basic long sleeve button up, as well as a couple like kind of fancier ones. I do kind of like this one with this yoke detailing. There's something about the yoke detailing on patterns. I've done some a shirt dress for myself that has like a yoke detailing. I've made several versions of the Megan Nielsen Matilda dress, and it has like that yoke detailing, and I don't know, there's something about it that it's like, it's a nerdy sewing thing for me for sure. It's just like, ooh, you get to like put it in there, and you get to do like all the top stitching around there. I don't always love doing it, but sometimes I do. And when I'm in the mood for it, it just, I don't know, it like satisfies some inner sewing nerdery, and it really is lovely. But I feel like that might be a little bit too westerny, cowboy-y for Micah, but we'll see. I might try and do it in like a plain fabric where it's not too obvious, but we'll see how this one turns out first and go from there. That is all that I have in the way of sewing. So let's move on to the next segment of the podcast. The next segment is typically my books and more segment. Again, this is just going to be a shorter portion this week. Again, my reading has not been particularly voracious at the moment. I feel like I've just kind of been in a bit of a reading slump. Like, not too bad, but just not finding something that makes me want to like devour a book. And that's fine, because I'm spending a lot of time doing knitting and sewing, so it all works out. So recently, I've been reading some Agatha Christie books, which is always a good go-to. I think I mentioned last time I was reading Sherlock Holmes, and I finished the casebook of Sherlock Holmes, which I was reading, and then I've read a few different Agatha Christie books, and I'm just trying to kind of figure out what I want to read next, because I just finished an Agatha Christie book yesterday, and so I need to figure out what I want to read next. So I don't really have anything in the way of book recommendations this week, other than to say that Agatha Christie is amazing and one of my all-time favorite authors. Highly recommend any of her books. My personal favorite of her sleuths, of her detectives, if you will, is Poirot. He's so funny, and I love all the stories. I feel like Miss Marple, which is her other kind of main detective lady, kind of annoys me a little bit sometimes. She's still really fun to read about, but she's not, I don't like her as much as Poirot. So, if you have not read hers and you like a good sort of classic murder mystery sort of a story that's not too stressful, highly recommend Agatha Christie. But for what I've been watching recently, I just finished rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender again. I've watched that show probably, I think, about 4 times at this point. I love it so much. It is an animated series. It's on Netflix right now. There's only about 3 seasons, and it's pretty short. I think it was originally a Nickelodeon, like, kids show or something. So the first half of the first season is it's pretty kidsy, and it's just like, okay. But it's the story of this fantasy world, I guess you would call it, where you have Aang, who is the Avatar, and he got stuck. He was frozen in an iceberg for 100 years, and he shows back up. And in this world, there are 4 different, how would you describe it? Factions, people groups, I guess you could say, for each of the different elements. There's fire, earth, air, and water. And in these different groups of people, there are certain people who are called benders. They're firebenders, earthbenders, waterbenders, airbenders. So 100 years ago, when Aang got trapped into this iceberg, there were loads and loads of airbenders, but when he is freed from said iceberg, he discovers very quickly that he is the last of the airbenders, because the Fire Lord, the guy who ruled the fire, I was gonna say the fire department, not the fire department, the Fire Nation, that word. The Fire Nation went through and destroyed all of the other airbenders because he was trying to destroy the next Avatar. And the Avatar is basically this one person, he's almost like a wizard, I guess you could say, who's special. He can control all 4 elements, so he can do all of them. Or it's not always a he, it's a he or she can control all 4 elements. And it's one of these things where it's sort of an inherited thing. So when the previous Avatar dies, some baby in one of these 4 nations becomes the next Avatar. I don't know, I guess it's a baby. I'm not sure if it's a baby or if whenever the previous Avatar dies, another one, they're not related, so it's not like it goes from a father to son or father to daughter sort of a thing. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all whatsoever. I just love this show so much. It is so much fun, and it has so many good moments. It's hilarious. It makes me laugh. There's a character in there whose name is Iroh, and he's this old, wise man, and I love him so much. He is one of my all-time favorite fictional characters. Out of movies, TV shows, books, whatever. Uncle Iroh is amazing. He's the best, and I love him so much. He is just such a phenomenal character. So yeah, if you have not seen it, please go watch it. I know it's a little bit kidsy, I guess. It's just so lovely, because basically the whole thing is that Aang has to go and learn how to master all 4 of these elements so that he can defeat the bad guy, the big evil bad guy, which is the Fire Lord of the Fire Nation, and who is trying to basically take control of the whole world and turn all of the different nations under one nation, and it's all the Fire Nation. And it's so good. There's some episodes that are a little bit weird and silly, but overall, it's just such a good show, and I really, really enjoyed it. Hence why I have watched it like 4 times. Yeah. So that is all that I have to recommend as far as books or TV shows or movies or whatever for this week. If you have any books that you are particularly enjoying, summertime reads, or just books that you really like in general, leave a couple suggestions down below. I would love to hear it. I typically tend to like pretty drama-free, stress-free, violence-free sort of books. So if you know of any that you really love, I'd love to hear some recommendations, because I'm kind of in a little bit of slump right now. And I wanna read something, so please feel free to leave some down below, or if there's a period drama-y movie or TV show that you really enjoy, I'd love to hear about that too. But that brings us to the last little bit of our podcast, that, I'm getting my words all mixed up here. It brings us to the last portion of our podcast, where I'm going to do a little bit of a life update, just a tiny little segment, and then we're going to go ahead and close things out. So, what's been going on in my life recently? Kind of everything and nothing. It's kind of one of those things. My sister-in-law had her baby. I think I've mentioned it previously that my sister-in-law and I were both pregnant at the same time. She had her baby, was it last week? Or is it 2 weeks ago now? No, it was last week. I was like, holy cow, is he already 2 weeks old? Goodness gracious. No, it was last week. He's healthy and beautiful and lovely, and it was amazing to get to hold a brand new little baby. He's super cute. So that was really fun. Other than that, what have we been up to? Nothing too much. Mike and I are very, very chill, and we don't do a whole lot. We just kind of chill at home. We're both kind of homebodies. Me more so than Micah, for sure. I am full-on hermit. Like, that is my vibe. I stay at home all the time. But yeah, so we haven't been doing too much. Micah's been doing work, and I've been at home doing housework and stuff. Yeah. Nothing too interesting, nothing too crazy going on. We're just trying to get everything in order for when the baby gets here. There's like the last little bits and pieces. I'm planning to have a home birth, so we've got to get like the last bits of stuff that we will need for when the baby comes. I'm down to the last like 8 weeks, which is, oh, it's so cool. I'm so excited. It's so, I don't know, pregnancy has been everything I expected, and it has been just such a privilege. I have so loved being pregnant, and there's just moments where it will hit me where it's like, this is a baby that I'm about to have, and I just feel so lucky and so privileged to be able to experience this and to get to have a baby. Like, yeah, I've always wanted a baby. I've always wanted multiple babies, so I don't expect this to be the last one by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, so that's pretty much all it's been. A lot of sewing, a lot of knitting, and just kind of hanging out and chilling at home, watching YouTube, watching the different podcasters and such. Yeah. I was literally just about to start ending things and my camera battery died, so I think I have been particularly chatty in this episode. Anyway, I'm gonna hurry and do this before it dies. Thank you so much for hanging out and spending time with me today. Thank you for watching this episode, supporting my channel, liking, all of that. I'm just so happy that you are here and that you have spent the time with me, and yeah, just thank you so much for all of your support. I am going to go and hopefully start getting this edited so I can get it uploaded tomorrow. I've got to go clean up the kitchen before Micah gets home. It's one of the things that I try and make sure I get done before he gets home, just as a way to bless him and love on him, that he has at the very least a clean kitchen to come home to. I'm not always good at it, but yeah, it's something I try to do. So he's gonna be heading home about now, so I've got to hurry up and finish. Anyway, thank you so much for just watching this video and being here, and I am looking forward very much to talking to you again very soon. Bye.